Hey guys, tonight we're heading into the ancient dust of Egypt, where the sun bakes the limestone and time feels like it forgot to move forward. You're standing at the foot of something massive, colossal, utterly impossible. The Great Pyramid of Giza rises in front of you, over 450 feet high, built more than 4,000 years ago without cranes, without steel, and apparently without a single mistake. You crane your neck to take it all in and suddenly feel very, very small. Honestly, you probably wouldn't survive a day in a 4th Dynasty work crew. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing how far this little bedtime club stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk along the Giza Plateau, your sandals kicking up dry, chalky dust. In the distance, camels shuffle lazily, their feet sinking silently into the sand. But you're not here for them. You're here for the pyramid. Not just any pyramid, the Great Pyramid of Khufu. It's the only surviving wonder of the ancient world, and, weirdly, possibly the most misunderstood. Engineers still can't fully explain how this thing was built. We're talking over 2 million limestone blocks, some weighing as much as 80 tons. 80 tons. There's no consensus on how ancient Egyptians moved them. Ramps, levers. Some combination of brute strength and unfathomable coordination. Historians still argue whether internal spiral ramps might be hidden inside the pyramid walls. But if they are, no one's found them yet. The joints between the stones are so tight you couldn't slide a credit card between them, assuming Khufu had a bank account. The base of the pyramid is almost perfectly level off by less than an inch across a site covering 13 acres. That's more precise than most modern parking lots. Oh, and it's aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal points north, south, east, west. Not by accident. Ancient Egyptians didn't just eyeball it. Some theories suggest they used the stars. Others claim they used shadows at the solstice. Either way, they nailed it with almost GPS-level accuracy. And they didn't even have compasses. You duck into the narrow entrance, the air cooling instantly, thick with the scent of old stone and centuries of silence. The walls close in as you inch through the ascending passageway, and your shoulder brushes the rough stone hand-cut, not machine-sawed. Deep inside is the so-called King's Chamber. No treasure, no furniture, just a single granite sarcophagus and echoes that stretch across millennia. Here's a strange fact: the granite used in the King's Chamber came from Aswan, over 500 miles away. Imagine dragging multi-ton blocks upriver, then across the desert. You try to picture it, but your brain short-circuits somewhere around. No forklifts, and here's the kicker: modern cranes can barely lift stones that size. In 1978, a Japanese team tried to build a scaled-down replica of the pyramid using traditional methods: wooden sleds, ropes, manpower. They couldn't even get started. Eventually, they used helicopters. But it's not just the size or the weight, it's the intentionality. Every angle, every alignment, every proportion seems purposeful. Some researchers believe the pyramid encodes mathematical constants. Pi, phi. Even the speed of light, though, let's be honest. That one probably belongs more in the tinfoil hat camp. Still, fringe theories aside, you can't help but feel something uncanny here. Not mystical, just incredibly, impossibly smart. It's the kind of thing that makes you whisper how without really expecting an answer. And let's not forget the labor. The Hollywood version would have you believe slaves did all the work. But archaeological digs at nearby workers' villages suggest something else. These weren't enslaved people, they were skilled laborers. Rotating crews, fed well, treated for injuries, maybe not a vacation, but not a death sentence either. The scale of coordination still boggles the mind. Project managers today sweat over building a freeway overpass. Pharaoh Khufu's team built a 6 million-ton monument that's still standing straight. Kind of humbling as you sit on a cool ledge and trace your fingers along a stone block. You notice a faint chisel mark. Someone's hand was here thousands of years ago. Not a god, not an alien, just a person. Maybe sunburned, maybe tired, but determined, focused. That's the real awe, not what they built, but that they knew how. And yet, here we are, with computers and cranes and laser levels, and we still can't quite figure out how they did it. Not fully, not really. It's as if some part of their method, some crucial step, slipped through time's fingers, lost or maybe never recorded at all. You walk back out into the desert air, blinking against the sudden sunlight, feeling like you've just stepped out of a stone time capsule. You can't shake the feeling that the answer is still here, buried in dust, locked in geometry, humming softly in the air between the blocks. But before we leave Egypt, there's something else waiting to crumble your assumptions, something built centuries later, but somehow tougher than modern steel-reinforced concrete. You find yourself transported not just through time, but across the shimmering Mediterranean. You're squinting into the salty spray of a Roman harbor, the air thick with the scent of seaweed and olive oil, the kind of place where toga-clad engineers mutter in Latin and somehow build things modern science still doesn't quite understand. You step onto an ancient breakwater, crusted with barnacles and stubbornly intact. 2,000 years of storms, salt water, and seismic tantrums, and it's still here, still strong, still refusing to fall apart like the modern concrete that's already crumbling in bridges barely 30 years old. What kind of magic is this? Welcome to the riddle of Roman concrete. Stronger in water, tougher over time, and somehow completely lost for centuries. You crouch down and run your hand along the sun-warmed stone. It doesn't feel like modern concrete. There's something coarse about it, gritty, like it's got secrets packed in every grain. Turns out, it kind of does. Ancient Roman engineers used a special blend of volcanic ash called pozzolana mixed with lime and seawater. Nothing fancy, no rebar, no cement mixers, but somehow it bonded into a structure that not only endured water, but thrived in it. In fact, researchers now think seawater actually strengthens it over time. That's not just weird, it's almost rude. You'd expect salt water to erode things, but in Roman marine concrete, it encourages a chemical reaction that grows crystals specifically, something called aluminous tobermarite. It's like the concrete heals itself, a kind of ancient self-repairing stone. Historians still argue whether the Romans truly understood the science behind this, or if they just lucked into a perfect volcanic formula. Either way, the result was astonishing aqueducts, seawalls, harbors, pier structures that shouldn't still be here, but are. You pass under a crumbled arch where the shadows are cool and deep. The echo of footsteps from long ago feels oddly fresh. Here's a fun one, the Portus Casanus, a Roman harbor in modern-day Tuscany, still juts proudly into the sea. Its foundations haven't been replaced, not patched, not reinforced, just there, quietly resisting the tides for 2 millennia. Compare that to a modern harbor in the same location, built in the 1960s, needs constant repairs, gets eaten by salt water like it's candy. Back in the day, Roman engineers didn't write long instruction manuals, but they did write about concrete. Pliny the Elder, in between getting blown up at Pompeii, wrote admiringly of the way their concrete hardened as if it were naturally grown. Imagine describing your sidewalk as if it blossomed like a tree. That's the level of reverence they had. And they didn't just slap this stuff together. Oh no, the Romans were picky. They sourced their ash from specific volcanic sites, like the Bay of Naples, believing the quality changed depending on the location. Turns out, they were right. Modern geologists tested different samples. The ash from Naples chemically perfect. Now, it would be nice if the Romans had left behind a neat, detailed how-to guide. But nope. Most of the recipe was oral tradition. And like your grandma's best lasagna, it died with the last person who knew how to make it. That brings us to the modern scramble. Engineers today are trying to reverse engineer Roman concrete. Labs are testing ancient samples. There's even hope we could use it for building ocean structures or even lunar habitats. Because hey, if it survived 2,000 years of salty waves, it might just handle the moon. But don't get too excited. We still don't fully understand it. The exact conditions that make those magical crystals grow was still being debated. The way the concrete resists cracking, still not perfectly replicable. Every time we think we've cracked it, another mystery bubbles up sometimes, literally. Fringe fans have their own theories. Of course, some whisper about lost scrolls, secret guilds of masons who hid their recipes in symbols and songs. Others get even wilder. Maybe the volcanic ash had some unknown property, radioactive, magnetic, or not from this earth. Yes, really. There are folks who believe the Romans were handed this tech by something not quite human, because, apparently, aliens are really into seawalls. But let's be real, the truth is more satisfying. It's not aliens. It's just brilliance. Human brilliance, fueled by necessity and centuries of observation. You imagine a Roman engineer, hunched over a dock, watching a wave crash, then carefully adjusting his mix by feel, not by formula. And here's your emotionally immersive moment. Because it hits you as you sit there, they didn't build these harbors to impress you. They built them to last for their kids. And their kids' kids. You can almost hear them talking, laughing, maybe cursing at a mix that didn't set quite right. The past feels close, like a whisper between stones. But there's still a cliffhanger here, because we haven't talked about how they moved all that concrete, or how they designed the layouts with such surgical precision. That's coming. But first, what if your engineering challenge didn't require strength, but scale? Imagine drawing a picture so massive, it stretches for miles, and you can't even see the full design unless you're flying above the clouds. The sun burns high over the Peruvian desert, and the earth beneath your feet crackles like dry parchment. There's not a single cloud, not a single blade of grass, just miles of ochre dust and lines at first. They're easy to miss. Faint grooves in the dirt. You squint, tilt your head. Then it hits you. Those aren't just scratches. You're standing on a drawing, a massive one, a spider, a hummingbird, a monkey with an impossibly curly tail. Stretching across the plain are giant geoglyphs, some over 1,000 feet long, etched into the desert floor more than 1,500 years ago by the Nazca people. You can't even see them properly from the ground, which begs the question, how did they? The Nazca lines remain one of the most mind-bending, ancient engineering feats in the Americas, simple in construction, yet colossal in vision. The methods scrape away the top layer of oxidized red soil to reveal the lighter earth beneath. No advanced tools, no concrete, just shovels, sticks, and stone markers. And yet, what they left behind is visible from space. You walk carefully along one of the perfectly straight lines. Some run for over 10 miles without veering even a foot. Your boots crunch softly on the pale desert gravel. The sky pulses with heat, and there's no breeze, no bird song, just the rhythmic whisper of ancient precision. How did they plan these vast drawings? With no high-altitude view, historians still argue whether they used elevated platforms or a simple but genius system of grids and scaled drawings. One theory suggests wooden stakes and string could have helped them maintain proportion and angle like ancient etch-a sketch masters. Others suggest observation towers, but no conclusive evidence has been found. Here's a fun fringe tidbit. A few of the figures appear to resemble astronauts. That's right, big heads, wide eyes, waving arms. Cue the alien theories. Some believe the Nazca lines were meant as signals to the skies, runways for ancient spacecraft, or maybe messages to gods watching from above. It's wild, but also kind of fun to imagine little green tourists admiring the monkey from their UFO. Of course, mainstream archaeologists roll their eyes at that. The more grounded theories suggest the lines had religious significance. Perhaps they were part of rituals to call for rain or offerings to sky gods. One line leads directly to a mountain where water flows during the rainy season. Another traces the path of the solstice sunrise. Coincidence maybe, but probably not. There's an emotional gut punch here too. The Nazca lived in one of the driest places on Earth. Water was everything. Their survival depended on seasonal floods and underground aquifers. Imagine carving a prayer across the desert floor, hoping the sky will notice, hoping it will rain. The lines endured because the climate barely changes. No rain to wash them away, no vegetation to grow over them, just dry, steady silence for centuries. You brush your fingers along the edge of one groove, it feels shallow, maybe 4 inches deep, but your touch stirred you a little dust. The first movement in possibly 1,000 years. You close your eyes and imagine the makers. Maybe it was a group effort, families working together. One person directing the placement of stones, another measuring string, children running ahead to fix a crooked edge. No cranes, no overseers, just a community making art that no one would ever fully see. And maybe that's the most human part of it. They made something massive and beautiful, knowing it wasn't for them to admire. Not really. It was for the sky, for their gods, or for the future. There's also something incredibly tactile about this desert canvas. The pebbles crunch, the sun bakes, the heat wavers. You wipe sweat from your brow and glance up, trying to imagine what a hummingbird looks like when it's the size of a football field. But there's no way to see it all, not unless you had wings. Here's the kicker: the Nazca had no known flying machines, no hot air balloons, no hang gliders. So how did they check their work? Some researchers suggest they didn't. Maybe they just trusted the math. Or maybe that's the point. It wasn't meant to be viewed by human eyes. That idea stings a little, doesn't it? You step carefully across the lines, realizing just how vulnerable they are. A single truck tire could erase centuries. In 2018, someone actually drove a delivery van right through a section of the lines. The damage is permanent. No undo button. That's how delicate ancient genius can be. But there's another mystery wrapped in this one. Not far from the lines, archaeologists discovered underground spiral wells, pukios that still deliver water. They're shaped like coils, drawing wind downward to push water through tunnels. No pumps, no electricity, just airflow and geometry. And yes, they still work. So maybe the Nazca weren't just artists. They were engineers, hydrologists, ritual architects. Maybe the lines weren't just messages, but maps, diagrams of their relationship with water, sky, and earth. You take one last look back. The desert glows amber in the setting sun. The lines stretch quietly toward the horizon, patient, deliberate, unblinking. Somewhere out there, the monkey curls its tail into infinity, waiting. And as the stars begin to prick the sky above, you start to wonder what other ancient machine might be hiding in plain sight. Something with gears, calendars, and the wisdom of the cosmos. You're not on land anymore. You're drifting, suspended in the blue-black belly of the Aegean Sea, surrounded by silence. A fish flicks past, and something gleams in the shadows, a twisted bronze gear, crusted with barnacles. You blink. It almost looks modern, but it's not. It's ancient, over 2,000 years old. In fact, and it changes everything you think you know about the ancient world. Meet the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek device discovered in 1901 inside a sunken Roman shipwreck near the island of Antikythera. At first, divers thought it was just a lump of corroded metal, but then the gears were spotted, and more, layer upon layer of dials, inscriptions, cogs, and a complexity that shouldn't exist in the year 100 BCE. You float toward it now, eyes wide behind your imaginary diving mask. It's no bigger than a shoebox, but what it contains, well, let's just say your smartwatch would be impressed. The Antikythera mechanism is often called the world's first analog computer. It could predict eclipses, track the positions of the sun and moon, even model the irregular orbit of the moon using something called epicyclic gearing. In layman's terms, it was precise, very precise, too precise. Some might say. Historians still argue whether the Greeks built it entirely on their own, or if they inherited knowledge from the Babylonians or even the Egyptians. There's also heated debate about who actually made it. Some scholars suspect it might have come from the workshop of Archimedes himself. Others point to Hipparchus or Posidonius, both masters of astronomy. You run your finger along a replica dial, One side modeled the Metonic cycle, a 19-year lunar calendar. Another tracked the Olympic Games. Yes, really, it wasn't just about stars and planets. It was also your ancient sports calendar. And here's the part that makes engineers sweat the gearwork. Over 30 interlocking bronze gears, with teeth as small and precise as those in a modern watch. No CNC machines, no steel tooling, just hand tools, soft metal, and pure genius. The mechanism even used a differential gear, a concept that wouldn't officially appear again until the 16th century. A chill runs through you as you realize what this means. The ancient Greeks weren't just gazing at the stars, they were calculating them, predicting them, modeling the heavens in bronze and math. And then they forgot, or at least we forgot. The knowledge vanished. That's the emotional gut punch here. The Antikythera mechanism isn't just a machine, it's a ghost, a fossil of forgotten brilliance. Whoever built it wasn't tinkering in a vacuum. They were standing on a mountain of accumulated wisdom, handed down through generations. And yet, none of that legacy survived intact. You can almost feel the loneliness of it, like discovering a single page from a lost encyclopedia. We have no records of similar devices, no instruction manuals, no diagrams, just fragments. X-rays of the mechanism have revealed inscriptions and mathematical ratios that hint at other functions, maybe even the 5 known planets of the time. But most of the original wood housing has rotted away. We're left with questions more than answers. Here's a quirky fact. The device includes a Saros dial that predicts eclipses down to the hour and even tags them with Greek letters believed to signify their color and potential omens. A kind of celestial weather forecast with mood annotations. Imagine a horoscope crossed with a precision clock. And let's not forget the shipping mystery. The device was found in a Roman shipwreck, so why was this Greek machine sailing west? Was it loot, a diplomatic gift, or just someone's favorite travel toy? Of course, the fringe theories love this one. Some claim it's proof of time travel. Others say it was built with alien guidance, or that it's a leftover from Atlantis. There's even one particularly bold YouTuber who insists it's an ancient iPad. Spoiler, it's not. But still, great thumbnail. Modern attempts to rebuild the device have been impressive, but frustrating. No one can quite agree on the full layout. Some replicas work, but none are perfect. Even with 3D scanning, tomography, and machine learning, we're still guessing at parts of its design. It's like solving a 1,000-piece puzzle with only 400 pieces and no picture on the box. But here's the tactile beauty of it. When modern replicas are turned by hand, the gears glide smoothly. They hum with quiet precision, ticking off lunar months and solar years in perfect harmony. It's deeply satisfying. You imagine some ancient scholar doing the same thing, seated beneath an olive tree, cranking the dial and murmuring predictions of eclipses to come. And that's your awe moment. This wasn't built to impress. It wasn't gold-plated or encrusted with jewels. It was practical, functional, a tool to understand time, nature, and fate. In a world without electricity or digital screens, it was the closest thing to touching the cosmos. You leave the sea behind, salt still on your tongue, mind buzzing. Because if the Greeks could build that, what else might have existed? What devices or machines were lost to time, swallowed by fire, war, or indifference. It's a haunting thought, but you don't get long to dwell, because now you're heading to a place where machines don't move, but stones do, and somehow they weigh more than jumbo jets. You're standing in the middle of a jungle, sweat trickling down your spine, mosquitoes whining around your ears, vines twist like snakes along the tree trunks, and somewhere in the distance, a howler monkey yells like it's had one too many espressos. Then the foliage clears, and you stop, because in front of you, rising out of the green like something from a forgotten video game level, is a step pyramid, massive, symmetrical, intimidating. This is the temple of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza, one of the ancient Maya's crowning architectural achievements. But it's not just a stone triangle, it's a machine, a solar calendar in disguise. You squint up at the steep stairs, all 91 of them, multiply that by 4 sides, and toss in the top platform 365 steps, one for each day of the year. Nice and tidy, but that's just the warm-up, twice a year. During the spring and fall equinoxes, something wild happens. As the sun sets, shadows form along the northern staircase, creating the illusion of a snake slithering down the pyramid's edge. It aligns perfectly with a stone serpent head at the base. The shadow shifts as the sun sinks, and for a brief moment, the god Kukulkan seems to descend to earth, a divine event, courtesy of architectural trigonometry. You walk slowly up the steps, the limestone warm under your fingers. The incline is steep enough to make you question your leg day schedule, and the whole structure hums with geometric intent. You can't shake the feeling that every angle, every stone, is doing math behind your back. Historians still argue whether the Maya designed it for show or as a part of a more functional astronomical complex. But either way, you're looking at a pyramid that moves, in a sense using only sun, shadow, and time. That's not all. The Maya built observatories with window slits that align with specific celestial event solstices, Venus risings, lunar cycles. Their city planning wasn't just practical, it was cosmological. Streets and temples aligned to constellations. It's like they mapped the stars onto the ground. And they didn't just watch the skies. They counted. Oh, did they count? The Maya developed a base 20 numerical system, used a concept of 0 centuries before Europeans caught on, and tracked time with obsessive precision. Their long count calendar could measure spans of time longer than recorded history. You pause to wipe your brow, heart thudding not just from the climb, but from the quiet realization that the Maya knew exactly when you'd be standing here. That calendar, it ends cycles and dates we can translate into our own system. It's how people freaked out about 2012 and the supposed end of the world. Spoiler. We're still here, but the calendar didn't predict apocalypse. It just marked the close of one grand cycle and the beginning of another. You climb down and walk to the nearby Great Ball Court, where walls stretch high and a whisper can be heard perfectly across the 545-foot length. Try it. Say something embarrassing. Someone way over there just heard you. This was acoustic engineering intentional. No microphones, no concrete parabolas, just pure understanding of sound reflection. Some believe it was used for rituals or royal speeches. Others say the court was used to play the deadly Mesoamerican ball game, where losing wasn't just bad for your stats, it might cost you your head. Here's a quirky detail: some of the stone carvings around the ball court show players with heads and others without. The Maya were not known for subtlety. But let's talk about the actual building part, because here's where your jaw should officially drop. The Maya built without metal tools, no iron, no steel, no wheels for transport, and yet, the blocks used in these temples and pyramids were perfectly cut, leveled, and fitted. No mortar, just stone stacked on stone, tight enough that you couldn't slip a playing card between them. Fringe theorists love this stuff. Some say the Maya were taught by alien engineers. Others insist they used lost sound technology to levitate stones. We're talking crystal vibrations and sonic resonance chambers. Is it likely? Not really, but it's more entertaining than a lot of trial and error and really good stone chisels. Here's a mainstream fact that's just as cool. Archaeologists found pigments inside Maya temples that still retain color after more than 1,000 years. Their Maya blue remains incredibly stable, its recipe long debated and only recently cracked. A mix of indigo dye and a rare clay called palygorskite. It resists weathering and even chemical breakdown. Ancient chemistry FTW. You move slowly through the ruins, brushing your hand along the rough, sun-baked wall. There's something deeply nostalgic about this place, like it remembers being a city, a vibrant, loud, mathematical city full of scribes, priests, athletes, and kids sneaking into the observatory to see the stars. And yet, it fell silent. Scholars still argue over why Maya cities were abandoned. Climate change, drought, political unrest, resource depletion, probably some combination of all of the above. Whatever the cause, the jungle took it back. Trees grew through courtyards, vines cracked stone, but the math stayed put. You glance back at the pyramid one more time. The sun is lower now, and shadows are starting to stretch. Not enough for Kukulkan's full descent yet, but enough to remind you that something ancient still ticks here. Not with gears or wires, but with angles, sunlight, and centuries-old calculations. And just as you start to leave, a breeze rustles the leaves, and you hear it faint, but there a hiss, like a serpent in the shadows. But it's probably just the wind. Probably. You're standing in the middle of the Bolivian highlands now, 12,000 feet above sea level. The air is dry and thin, so thin. In fact, you feel slightly dizzy. Every step across the cracked, dusty ground feels like a workout. But then, through the haze of altitude-induced fatigue, you spotted a field of stone blocks, scattered like a broken Lego set abandoned by a giant toddler. This is Puma Punku, and it might be the strangest construction site on the planet. Here's the deal. Puma Punku is part of the larger Tiwanaku archaeological complex near Lake Titicaca. It dates back to around 500 to 600 CE, maybe earlier, depending on which archaeologist you ask. But the site is littered with stone slabs weighing up to 130 tons. Some of them were somehow transported from quarries over 50 miles away. Others are so precisely cut, with right angles and smooth drill-like holes, that you wonder whether someone secretly brought a laser level and a power saw. The most famous stones are the H block's massive andesitic chunks shaped like the letter H, with such precision that modern stonemasons scratch their heads. Their edges are so straight, their inner angles so perfect, you could practically measure them with a machinist's square. And yet, they're over 1,000 years old. You kneel beside one of the blocks, running your fingers over the grooves. They're sharp, crisp, no signs of crude chiseling, just clean cuts through some of the hardest stone known to humankind. Historians still argue whether these blocks were cut using advanced copper tools, as mainstream theory suggests, or whether we're missing a crucial part of the story. Because here's the thing, andesite is tough, like really tough. It's harder than iron, and copper is soft. Try carving a steak with a rubber spoon, you get the idea. So what's the explanation? One theory proposes that they use sand and wooden tools with water to slowly grind through the stone. Tedious extremely, but possible. Another suggests they may have used a form of primitive concrete, essentially pouring the stones into molds. Sounds a bit out there, but some researchers believe the mineral composition of a few blocks supports that idea. Then there's the fringe camp always ready with something spicy. Ancient aliens, lost high-tech civilizations, vibrational levitation. There's even a hypothesis involving survivors of Atlantis setting up shop in South America. It's a lot, but you can't deny the mystery makes your pulse quicken. A mainstream historical fact, though the Tiwanaku people, who likely built Pumapunku, had no written language, no wheel for transport, and yet their architecture shows strong evidence of urban planning, irrigation systems, and advanced agriculture, including raised field farming techniques that allowed them to grow crops at high altitude with minimal water loss. It's another reminder that sophistication doesn't always come wrapped in a bow of shiny tech. Still, the precision here is unsettling. Some of the stones have narrow channels that seem to interlock with others, like they were part of a giant three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. Others are covered in drill holes that follow mathematical spacing. You imagine a massive structure once standing here, maybe a temple or palace, fit together like Tetris blocks, and then it collapsed, or was dismantled, or maybe never completed. No one knows for sure. You step carefully through the field, trying not to trip over fractured corners and sunken bases. The silence here feels deep, like the wind itself is holding its breath. And for a moment, you sense something heavy, not just the stones, but the weight of questions stacked on questions. One emotionally immersive moment hits you what must it have been like to be a stone carver here, bent over these enormous blocks for hours each day, eyes squinting against the glare, lungs burning from the thin air, chisel in hand, carving with impossible patience. Did they know they were creating something timeless, or were they just doing a job, unaware that centuries later, people halfway around the world would stare at their work and whisper, "How?" You find a particularly stunning H block and press your palm into one of its slots. It's colder than you expect, smooth. You feel like you're touching a blueprint without the key. Some archaeologists believe the design of Pumapunku hints at modular construction, blocks that could be slotted together in various configurations, like building blocks for a civilization. If true, it's one of the earliest known examples of prefabricated architecture. IKEA, Eat your heart out. Another fun detail, the alignment. The site is carefully oriented to the cardinal directions. There's evidence of solar tracking and astronomical alignment, just like at Chichen Itza. The builders weren't just stacking rocks, they were aligning earth and sky, watching, measuring. But something changed. The Tiwanaku civilization faded by around 1000 CE, long before the Incas rose to prominence. Drought, political collapse, overfarming, take your pick. But they left behind these massive monuments, half finished and scattered, silent math problems written in stone. And yet, the stones don't tell you everything. Pumapunku has no surviving blueprints, no inscriptions, no scrolls explaining its purpose, just fragments, hints, like someone ripped out the middle chapters of a really good novel. You step back, scanning the horizon. The mountains loom like ancient guardians, and for a second, you think you see something move among the stones. A flicker of movement, a shadow that doesn't belong. But when you look again, it's gone. Just the wind, or something older, waiting to be remembered. You wake to a chill in the air and the faint crackle of snow beneath your boots. Your breath curls in front of you like ghost smoke as you trudge through the Siberian wilderness. There's a reason people don't casually vacation here unless they're looking for something. And you are, because here, in the middle of this vast, frozen forest, lies one of the most confounding ancient sites ever discovered, the megalithic fortress of Archaeum. It doesn't look like much from the ground, just uneven earth, scattered stones, and low mounds of snow-covered rubble. But then, you see the aerial image, a perfect circular layout, like a crop circle built out of wood and clay. Archaeum is more than 4,000 years old, built long before Rome, before the Parthenon, even before the pyramids had finished settling into their shadows. And yet, its symmetry is uncanny. 2 concentric circular walls, carefully planned streets, a central square, drainage systems, and everything aligned with astronomical precision. You're not looking at a random pile of huts. You're looking at a city that was designed to function like a living calendar. Historians still argue whether Archaeum was primarily a spiritual observatory, a trading center, or a military fort. Some think it was a northern Atlantis, especially because the entire site was discovered only in 1987 and under threat of flooding. The Soviet government was about to build a reservoir here. Then someone looked at satellite images and said, what's that weird circle? Your boots crunch softly over frost-bitten dirt as you circle the ruins. You can almost hear the footsteps of its builders, early Indo-European people, possibly related to the mysterious Sintashta culture. These were horse breeders, chariot makers, bronze workers, the tech of their time. Sure, but the layout of Archaeum suggests minds thinking way beyond mere survival. The city's gates align with the rising and setting sun during solstices and equinoxes. Narrow corridors channel light at specific times of year. There's even a theory that Archaeum was used to track the movements of 18 celestial bodies more than Stonehenge, which only tracks 6. You wander through the remains of one of the outer dwellings, small, circular homes that once held families, fires, laughter. The walls were insulated with clay and straw, thick enough to keep the Siberian cold at bay. Some rooms even had strange holes bored into the floors, possibly for drainage or something else. Some scholars think they were ritual basins. Others think they were early grain storage pits. One thing's for sure, they weren't just random holes. A little deeper into the site, you spot the remnants of metal furnaces. Bronze artifacts have been uncovered here: knives, jewelry, arrowheads. There's even evidence of early metallurgy workshops. The people of Archaeum weren't just stargazing philosophers, they were tool makers and warriors. 2. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Archaeologists have linked Archaeum's inhabitants to the earliest known use of two-wheeled chariots. That's not a small claim. It suggests these people helped lay the groundwork for future Indo-Iranian civilizations and maybe even Vedic culture, with its epic tales of cosmic cycles and divine fire. And now the quirky part. Some Russian researchers and, yes, a few fringe theorists believe Archaeum may have been a sacred site for fire rituals, similar to what's described in the Rig Veda. One particularly dramatic theory claims it was the birthplace of Zoroastrianism's fire worship. Another insists it was an interdimensional stargate, used by ancient priests to commune with celestial beings. Is there proof? Not really, but doesn't it feel like the kind of place where strange things might still linger? You stop and take a deep breath. The air tastes metallic, ancient. A cold wind whistles through the circular pathways, like it's tracing the same routes walked by generations long gone. There's a loneliness to the place, not sadness, exactly more like a ghost of memory, the kind that clings to your coat long after you've left. Even stranger, there are scorch marks found deep in the soil layers of Archaeum. Some scholars believe the city was intentionally burned, possibly during a ritual abandonment. Others say it was attacked, but the damage is widespread and controlled, like a fire that was meant to end something. You lean against the remains of the outer wall, fingers brushing frost off the stone. The sun is setting now, and for a few minutes, the whole ruin glows gold. Light slices through one of the aligned corridors, perfectly illuminating a central stone. You feel like you're watching time snap into place, and then it fades, just like that. Whatever they were doing here, tracking stars, casting bronze, whispering prayers into the frost, they stopped. The city fell silent, buried in snow and memory. But Archaeum wasn't the only ancient city with secrets. In fact, the more you learn about these early civilizations, the more one thing becomes clear. Precision wasn't an accident. Across cultures and continents, people who had never met and never traded still built with mathematical alignment, celestial awareness, and oddly familiar design patterns. That's either a sign of convergent human brilliance or a blueprint passed down from someone older than recorded history. Either way, as you walk away from the frozen circle, one question follows you like a shadow on the snow. What did they see all those centuries ago when they looked up into the sky? And why did they build a city to remember it? You drift now, not to another location, but into a different kind of space, the space beneath your feet, deep underground, somewhere in central Turkey. Your fingers trace the rough stone of a narrow tunnel. The air grows cooler as you descend, the light behind you fading until it's just a memory. You duck your head to avoid the low ceiling, your shoulders brushing the walls. It's close, too close. If you're claustrophobic, this is where the panic starts. But you keep going, because this isn't just any tunnel, It's the entrance to Kuyu, the ancient underground city that might just be the most mind-bending marvel we've explored yet. Picture this: a sprawling, multi-level metropolis carved directly into volcanic rock, 18 stories deep, with the capacity to shelter over 20,000 people. And not just people, livestock, food stores, water supplies, wine cellars, schools, churches, entire lives lived out beneath the surface, hidden from the sun. The age of Kuyu is still debated. Most agree it was significantly expanded during the Byzantine era, around the 7th or 8th century CE, as a refuge during Arab raids, but fragments of earlier tools and chambers hint at a much older origin, possibly as far back as 2000 BCE. And that's where things get murky. Historians still argue whether Kuyu was first built by the Phrygians, the Hittites, or some even older Anatolian culture. But whoever started it must have had one heck of a reason to go down instead of up. You shuffle through another low corridor, coming into a wide chamber. The ceiling arches above you now, carved smooth. There's a niche in the wall that once held a lamp. You imagine the flickering oil light casting shadows as families gathered, hushed and wide-eyed, listening for footsteps overhead. A mainstream historical fact: Kuyu includes sophisticated features like air shafts, wells with clean water, and massive rolling stone doors, circular slabs that could seal off passageways in an instant. Some of those doors weigh hundreds of pounds, but they're so well balanced, a single person could roll one into place to block an invading force. You pass through one of those doors now, brushing your hand across the edge. It feels strangely modern. You've seen panic rooms with less thought put into them. And here's the quirky tidbit: some rooms were equipped with what seemed to be early forms of ventilation chimneys that stretch all the way to the surface, keeping air fresh even at the lowest levels. Engineers still study these systems, trying to figure out how the ancient builders avoided collapse or suffocation. No blueprints, no reinforced beams, just stone and know-how. There's a musty scent down here: dust, minerals, something else, something older. You breathe it in and picture the thousands who once did the same, surviving sieges, hiding from invaders, maybe even escaping from something more primal, something the surface could no longer protect them from. And now, the fringe theory arrives, knocking politely. Some believe Kuyu was built not just for military defense, but for protection against a catastrophic event: solar flares, planetary bombardment, or even a global flood. The underground city as bunker. Others let's call them the fun crowd whisper about ancient machines buried in the tunnels, electromagnetic anomalies, or even alien influence. Are those ideas far-fetched? Sure, but here you are, 200 feet below ground, and none of this feels quite normal either. You press deeper into the complex, passing what was likely a school's small indentations in the walls suggest seating, maybe even chalkboards, then a wine cellar, then a chapel. The deeper you go, the more it feels like a real community, like they weren't just hiding here for a few weeks. Some might have lived here their whole lives. The stone changes slightly as you descend, softer here, harder there. Ancient builders would have had to understand geology intimately, carving layer by layer without triggering collapse. There are no signs of crude tools, No jagged hacking, just smooth passageways, thoughtful transitions, and perfect proportions. And then, in one dark tunnel, a sudden echo. Your foot scuffs a loose stone, and the sound ricochets down the hallway. Your breath catches. For a second, you feel the presence of thousands crowded into these tunnels, whispering in languages long dead. The hair on your neck lifts. You glance back. The tunnel is empty. Still, you can't help but wonder, what were they really hiding from? One last detail to blow your mind. Derinkuyu is just one of many underground cities in the Cappadocia region. Over 200 have been found. Some may be linked by tunnels stretching miles across the landscape, like an entire world hidden beneath the earth, waiting patiently to be rediscovered. And now you've reached the end, not just of the tunnel, but of the journey. Because as strange as Derinkuyu is, it's not alone. From the laser-cut stones of Pumapunku to the astronomical codes of Archaeum, from water systems more advanced than modern infrastructure to machines we still don't fully understand, one thing keeps surfacing. The past is not primitive. The past is not simple. And maybe we're the ones who've forgotten something. Now let's wind things down. Take a deep breath in. Let it out slowly. You've walked through deserts and jungles, over mountains, through ruins, and beneath the earth. You've felt the weight of stone, older than empires, and heard the whispers of people who knew things we still puzzle over. Let all of that soften now. Let the mysteries fade into the background like stardust. Picture the cool quiet of Derinkuyu, the hush of the underground city wrapping you like a blanket. Or maybe the slow, golden sunset over Archaeum, where shadows stretch across sacred circles. Wherever you are cocooned in blankets, the hum of your fan spinning low, let this story settle into your bones. Not as something to solve, but something to wonder about. The past is a dream with one eye open, and you were lucky enough to glimpse it tonight. The story is over. See you tomorrow night. Sweet dreams.